The film begins with the sudden outbreak of a deadly virus called the maze virus, a virus that turns people into violent zombies spreading across Europe. The outbreak causes massive destruction in several countries, including Ireland. Fortunately, the Irish government responds quickly and manages to develop a vaccine that can cure those who have been infected. Within just a few months, they succeed in curing 75% of the zombies and turning them back into normal humans. However, the remaining 25% are immune to the vaccine. The government plans to reintegrate the cured individuals back into society. But even though they are cured, they still remember everything they did while infected, which leaves them deeply traumatized. To make matters worse, many uninfected citizens reject the idea of reintegrating former zombies. They fear these individuals might relapse and become violent again. As a result, the government requires all former zombies to report regularly so they can be monitored. One day, a man named Sinan and his friend Connor, both infected for 4 years, complete their treatment and are ready to re-enter society. But when they see the public's resistance toward them, Connor tells Sinan that if he ever runs into trouble, he should speak up and ask for help. The story then shifts to a reporter named Abby, who is helping her son Cillian with his homework. Suddenly, someone knocks at the door. It's Sinan, her brother-in-law and the younger brother of her husband, Luke. They sit and talk about life before the outbreak. When Abby asks where Luke is, Sinan grows nervous and says they got separated during the crisis. After playing with Cillian, Sinan recalls the moment he was bitten by a zombie, who turns out to be Connor. While he was infected, Sinan attacked his own brother, which led to his death. This memory haunts him, and he's too afraid to tell Abby the truth.
Luke, we have to go. Run! Run! Please.
The next day, Sinan starts working at a healthcare facility, assisting Dr. Joan in treating the remaining zombies. As a former zombie himself, Sinan is safe from being bitten. He feels sympathy for the infected and hopes they can be cured just like he was. But that hope fades when Dr. Joan receives news that the government plans to eliminate all the remaining zombies. Meanwhile, Connor tries to visit his father, but the moment they meet, his father lashes out and tells him to leave. It turns out Connor had eaten his own mother while he was a zombie.
Get me back in the courtroom.
You're a monster.
Connor then visits Sinan's home. There, he sees Abby and Cillian being harassed by a woman who is upset that they're living with someone who used to be a zombie. After Sinan finishes work, he stops by a gathering spot for survivors and meets Connor. They talk about Sinan's job as a doctor's assistant. At that moment, a few soldiers come and ask to see Connor. Sergeant Cantor orders Connor to stay away from his own family, saying they no longer need him. Frustrated, Connor tries to fight back, but is quickly overpowered.
It's not your world anymore.
Before leaving, Cantor warns him that if he skips work again, he'll be sent to prison for violating government policy. The next morning, Sinan notices graffiti on their front door, marking the house as one occupied by a former zombie. It seems to be the work of the kids who bullied Cillian the day before.
I have to go.
This makes Sinan feel even more guilty. Not only is he hiding the truth about his brother's death, but now Abby and Cillian are being targeted because of him. After work, Sinan plans to give Cillian a miniature cavalry soldier, hoping he likes it. But just as Sinan is about to head home, he hears commotion coming from the zombie holding area. He discovers 2 soldiers torturing a zombie. Sinan tries to stop them, but the zombie escapes and is eventually shot dead by the soldiers. Meanwhile, as Abby is about to leave for work, Connor stops by to say hello. He introduces himself as Sinan's friend. They talk about the past, and Connor shares that he used to be a successful lawyer and had once run for election. But everything fell apart after he got infected, and now he works as a janitor. He thanks Abby for still treating him like a human being, and says Sinan is lucky to have a family that accepts him. At the same time, Dr. Joan tries to convince the government that she can develop a new vaccine to cure the remaining zombies. But it seems the government is no longer willing to take any more risks. They move forward with their decision to eliminate all remaining infected. Later, When Sinan tells Connor about the soldiers' cruel actions, Connor takes him to a secret location. There, he and a group of former zombies are planning an attack on the soldiers' apartment complex as revenge for the abuse they've endured. As a result of the incident, several soldiers die when a fire rapidly consumes their apartment building. It appears the police still don't know that Connor is the mastermind behind the attack. Over time, more and more former zombies join Connor's group. Later, when Sinan is about to leave the house, Abby asks if he's involved with the group responsible for the apartment attack. Sinan denies any involvement and says he often goes out at night simply because he doesn't want to disturb Abby's family. Abby then opens up about the past. When the government started curing the infected, she had hoped her husband could be saved, thinking he was only infected by the virus. But when she returned to their old home, she somehow immediately knew he was already dead. Abby tells Sinan that she truly wants him to see her and Cillian as his own family. From that moment, Sinan decides to leave Connor's group so he can spend more time with Abby and Cillian. Their bond grows stronger. One day, Connor suddenly shows up at their house, wondering why Sinan hasn't been joining the other former zombies lately. Sinan tells him that he's been spending more time with Cillian. They briefly discuss the government's plan to eliminate the remaining zombies. Abby believes it might be the best decision for humanity, while Sinan still hopes Dr. Joan can find a cure. But during the conversation, Connor brings up Abby's late husband, making her uncomfortable. She excuses herself to put Cillian to bed. After she leaves, Connor presses Sinan again about skipping the group meetings. Sinan says he wants out because he's committed to protecting his brother's family. Connor warns him to be careful. If Abby finds out that Sinan was involved in her husband's death, she'll be furious and might never forgive him. The next morning, as Sinan offers to walk Cillian to school, Abby hesitates because he doesn't know where the school is. But Cillian assures her he can show Sinan the way. Soon after they leave, Sergeant Cantor arrives at Abby's house. He begins questioning her about Sinan's activities. Cantor is investigating who's behind the apartment attack that killed several soldiers. He suspects that even though the former zombies are cured, something's still off. He believes they remain connected and could be planning something. Before leaving, Cantor asks Abby to contact him immediately if she notices anything suspicious. He also leaves behind some old documents, including photos of Connor constantly near Sinan, as if he's manipulating him. After the incident, Abby secretly sneaks into the building where the former zombies hold their meetings. There, she manages to record several strange activities, including a plan being discussed by Connor and the others. However, one of them spots her. Connor asks why she's there. Abby accuses him of being behind the attacks on the soldiers' apartments and tells him to stop seeing Sinan, saying that Sinan is her family. But Connor insists that he sees Sinan as his own family. Abby disagrees and tells him that what he feels is just a sickness.
Because you killed together? That's not a family, it's a sickness.
As Abby tries to leave, the former zombies suddenly chase after her. She panics and nearly gets caught, but she manages to escape. Meanwhile, at the medical facility, Joan observes a female zombie showing signs of recovery. When she tries to examine her, the zombie suddenly attacks, and the soldiers have to intervene. Joan begs them not to hurt the zombie, explaining that she's close to finding a cure, but the soldiers refuse. They're preparing to eliminate all remaining zombies.
She's being brought to the rest for euthanization.
That night, as Joan heads home, she sees Connor waiting outside her house. She becomes curious about what he wants at that hour. Elsewhere, Sinan and Cillian grow closer. Sinan begins to forget his past as a zombie and forms a stronger bond with Abby, who feels relieved that Sinan no longer goes out at night. Suddenly, a group of people attacks Sinan at his home. The next day, the police ask who the attackers were, and Sinan suspects they are locals who resent former zombies. After the incident, Sinan meets with Connor and says he can't protect Abby's family if he stays in the house. Connor then takes him to meet Joan and the other former zombies, who seem to be planning something. Joan explains that the military is about to wipe out the remaining zombies. Connor believes they can't just stand by because those zombies are still part of their community. They plan to break a few out of the facility so Joan can treat them and prove to the public that the infection is no longer a threat. At the same time, Abby starts to realize that last night's attackers weren't angry locals. They were former zombies. Their goal was to destroy her camera, which had captured footage of Connor and his group. Abby quickly contacts Sergeant Cantor and tells him that Connor is planning something. Soon after, a special unit arrives and arrests the former zombies, including Sinan. Unfortunately, Connor and Joan manage to escape. Later, while Abby is playing with Cillian in the park, Connor suddenly shows up and says there's something important he needs to tell her about her husband, Luke. He says that Luke once injured him back when he was still a zombie. He also tells Abby to talk to Sinan because Sinan was there when Luke died. Meanwhile, Cantor tries to pressure Sinan into confessing what the former zombies are planning. He even promises a safer place for Sinan's family if Sinan agrees to share valuable information. As Sinan prepares to go home, a former zombie woman suddenly approaches him and tells him to come to a location at 5 a.m. the next morning. Without explaining anything further, she quickly leaves. Soon after, Sinan arrives home and finds Abby waiting for him with an angry expression. When she asks what really happened to Luke, Sinan finally begins to tell the whole story. After the zombie virus spreads throughout the city, Luke believes Abby and Cillian are still in their apartment. So he and Sinan go to look for them. But during the search, Sinan is bitten by a zombie, who turns out to be Connor. Once Sinan becomes a zombie, he loses control of his body and accidentally attacks Luke, causing his death. Hearing this confession, Abby becomes even more furious, upset that Sinan didn't tell her the truth from the start. She kicks him out of the house.
How could you sleep here? Get out! Get the fuck out! Get the fuck out!
Sinan realizes that Connor must have been the one who revealed the secret to Abby. The next morning, Sinan goes to the place the former zombie woman mentioned. There, he meets Connor. But without his knowledge, Sinan is actually accompanied by Sergeant Cantor, who plans to arrest Connor after learning he's behind the previous attacks. When Cantor lets his guard down, Connor violently attacks him, killing him on the spot. Before leaving, Connor tells Sinan that their plan, the plan of the former zombies, has already begun. Meanwhile, at the medical facility, the former zombies begin to attack the soldiers guarding the zombie holding cells. After gaining control of the security room, one of them points a gun at Joan and opens all the cell doors. It turns out, these former zombies have no intention of working with Joan. Their goal is to release all remaining zombies so the virus can spread throughout the city again. However, Joan notices one female zombie who stays still in her room. When she approaches, she discovers that the woman has fully recovered and become human again. Tragically, as Joan tries to talk to her, another zombie attacks and kills Joan. The recovered woman breaks down in tears, heartbroken that she never got the chance to thank Joan. On the other side of town, as the zombies begin entering residential areas, the soldiers order everyone, including Abby, to get on the evacuation trucks. But Abby refuses at first because Cillian is still at school. Fortunately, Sinan arrives just in time, and Abby immediately tells him to go find Cillian. Sinan rushes to the school and manages to find Cillian. However, he doesn't realize that Connor is following them. When Sinan spots Connor, he tells Cillian to run while he tries to hold off the approaching zombies. Connor attacks Sinan, furious and feeling betrayed. Just as he's about to strike again, a soldier shoots him, mistaking him for a zombie. When Sinan is about to finish off Connor, he hears Cillian calling out to him. Without hesitation, Sinan rushes to save Cillian from the zombies surrounding him. But when he returns to where Connor was, Connor is gone, suggesting he might still be alive. At the evacuation center, Abby distracts the soldiers to escape and return to the city. She discovers a fallen soldier and takes his weapon to protect herself from the zombies, including soldiers who are beginning to turn. After she reunites with Cillian and Sinan, a zombie suddenly appears and tries to attack them. Sinan fights the zombie off violently. Sadly, Cillian is bitten in the process. Devastated, Abby considers ending her son's life to spare him from turning, but Sinan stops her, saying he can still save Cillian. He recalls seeing Joan successfully cure one of the zombies. Abby tearfully agrees to let Sinan take Cillian. But Sinan doesn't yet know that Dr. Joan, their only hope, is already dead. A few days later, the soldiers manage to wipe out the remaining zombies, and people begin returning to their homes. The government becomes more determined than ever to eliminate every last zombie to prevent another outbreak. Abby can only cry, knowing her son is now infected. She's aware that if the soldiers find Cillian, they won't let him live. Meanwhile, Sinan remains determined to find someone who can cure Cillian, even if he has to travel to the ends of the earth. He made a promise to Abby to save her son from the zombie virus.